don't know me, I'm Steve Smith. I'm on the Conservation Commission here in town, and this is a Conservation Commission piece of property. So it runs all the way up to the pond, and then all the way down the canal almost to, what street is that? That's Great Road, almost down to Great Road. So it's a good-sized chunk of property. At one point, there were 3 ice houses here. There's still a foundation in the woods here that you can see. There was an ice house over here. And further down the pathway, you can see the rain barrel down on the trail. There was another ice house. And that one's foundation is still pretty evident down there. So if you take a walk down, you can really see how big they were. And literally, they cut ice out of the river. The ice would go up a conveyor belt. The buildings were 3-4 stories high. It would go down a slide in the building and be packed in sawdust. So one of the problems would be right around August time when all the ice was gone. It was a big pile of dry sawdust sitting in a wooden building, so you can imagine what happened. Most of those buildings burned down. At some point in history, there actually was an oil distribution company here. So there were oil tanks here. So back, Kate, give me a date about when that
ended?
Yeah, when we did the restoration.
I mean, I was at the so it's like 1995.
Yeah, so very early on, this site was remediated. So 2 years ago, I got it in my brain that I wanted to do something down here, and I approached Sarah and the other members of the Conservation Commission to say what it would be like if we did a native teaching garden here. I drew up some drawings about what I thought it could look like, and before we started, it looked very different. So on either side of this asphalt walkway was just grass to the wood line that all pitched to the asphalt walk. So all the land went this way. One of the most difficult pieces of this site is the erosion that we get from Bosky. So Bosky is the road all the way up here. It's uphill for about 1/4 of a mile. And if you come down here in a rainstorm, where I'm standing will literally be about 6 inches of water. And it's got tremendous amount of force, as you can see by what erosion is taking place on both sides of the garden. My idea was to, originally before we took that out, those grades were much higher, so all that water would go down the asphalt walkway to the river, taking all the silt, all the debris, everything was going right into the river. So that was one of my big things. I wanted to stop all that silt from getting into the water. So, and in the winter time, when all that water would go down the asphalt walkway and freeze, it was like a skating rink. You couldn't even really walk down there and enjoy the space. So we had these 2 incredible granite signs. They were actually way down over to the right, where you really didn't even notice them. We also had another wooden display, such as the one up here, smaller and in terrible shape. And we had the granite blocks that were at one point a sculpture done by an artist that were randomly put out into the kind of the grass area out there. And the 3 benches that you see now were actually in the woods. So it wasn't really it wasn't really conducive to kind of enjoying it, to coming down and really having a good time. So I redesigned everything, I resketched everything. And my first foray into doing this, we actually got a CPC grant to do the original grading work. We took some boulders from that location, we took some of these granite blocks and brought them down there for seating. So we did a little play between the 2 spaces, and we developed this plan to make it hopefully more enjoyable. So initially we had one volunteer planting that did about 100 plants here. And then this past fall, my company has a day every year that they give to service called Red Day. So I brought in about 40 people from my office to do a second phase, and we put in about another 200 plants here. For me, this is very much a set it and forget it garden. When I first planted, my stress level was through the roof, I would come down every morning with 2 5-gallon buckets, walk out onto the dock, take water out of the river and water every plant. It took me about an hour and a half to do that every morning, and it got to be a little bit too much. So my philosophy now is, if it's tough enough to survive, I'm good with it. So I was going to do a big cleanup here and go through and pull all the dead plants, but I left some because I think it's important to talk about it's okay if some things fail and what's failing and why I think they're failing. So we can go down through and do that. I really wanted to also minimize the lawn area that's down there. My goal was just to have that kind of key-shaped piece to be mowed. The DPW mows for us. I'm so grateful that they do, but they do get a little carried away, and I can point out when we get down there what I'm hoping to have happen and kind of go back to nature. But it's been a very tough garden to deal with, primarily because of water, and also because, well, really water in both ways. Too much and not enough, right? So not enough for the plants to really do super well, and just battling this erosion has been, I'm literally down here with a pickaxe and a shovel, following kind of where the water's going and trying to correct it. And we can talk about what that looks like a little farther down, and we've had some success. The silt isn't going into the river, which is the big thing. So we've had some success with that. So if you want to walk down through and ask questions, or, but the people on Bosque don't want to pave. So it's a little bit of a battle with the town because they like the fact that it's kind of rural and rough and people can't go fast. And so, you know, it's a little bit of a trade-off. Like I said, my biggest concern was the incredible amount of silt that's coming off that hill. Believe it or not, I've probably swept and cleaned this area 6 times this summer because if I didn't, there would be 4 inches of silt right here. So if I can stop that from going in the river, I feel like that's my biggest victory here right now.
Was there any way to kind of intercept it?
I thought about putting a detention basin over there,
yeah,
and kind of catching it before it gets there, but I'm not quite that far in the process yet. So I've only been working on this garden. This is year 2, so we're still babies here in this project. So, yeah. Any other questions before we walk down through? Feel free to ask me plants. I'll know pretty much most of them. Some of them will trick me, but I'll do my best. The trucks, they would